You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more true news by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, Shane Class here with True Idaho News, and I'm with IFF, Idaho Freedom Foundation President Ron Nate. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Great. How are you doing, Shane? It's great to be on True Idaho News.
I'm doing great. You know what? I just noticed that you have the wrong name, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the Idaho Freedom Foundation while I change your name, and we'll get that fixed.
Oh, sure. The Idaho Freedom Foundation, we're going on our 16th year here. It was started out in 2009 when three great individuals got together. It was Wayne Hoffman, Heather Lauer, and Ralph Smead, the esteemed Ralph Smead, got together and said, you know what, it's time to have somebody fighting for the people and fighting for freedom in Idaho. We're tired of legislators who claim to be conservatives, but then go and behave differently once they're in Boise. And so it got started up that long ago. And for 13 years, we've been doing this Idaho Freedom Index, which holds legislators accountable to their votes. And often, not always, but often contradicts what they say in their words. And so when their legislators come back to their town hall meetings and tell you just how conservative they are, all the great things they've done for you, the Idaho Freedom Index gives them a grade based on their votes on policy bills, so gives them a Freedom Index score, and also a Spending Index score, which shows how they voted on budget bills. And so the Idaho Freedom Foundation re-rate the bills based on 14 metrics of freedom and about 9 metrics of spending. And the legislators vote on those bills, and the legislators actually determine their own scores and their own grades based on how they vote on those bills. And so it's been a wonderful tool for now 13 years. It's had impact on elections, impact on what kind of legislation moves through, and impact on Idahoans' lives. So we're doing great.
So many people don't know, and we're going to get into this a little bit today, how you do your index. And this has been a little area of controversy, especially lately in the last legislative session as things were heating up. You came out with your 2025 index, and a lot of people went, but I don't like my grade. And instead of looking at themselves and saying, well, why did I get graded so poorly? They attack Idaho Freedom Foundation. And we've seen a lot of that going around recently. I was posting a little bit about one of our local lawmakers' wife had got on and made some posts and just saying IFF is off the rails, da, 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 da. So, let's dig in a little bit. I want to kind of do a deep dive so that we can understand how you grade, and then maybe we can talk about some of the grades with some of the people.
All right. To set this up, first of all, I'd like to say that you mentioned that it's controversial or whatever this year. This year is just like every other year. Every time the Freedom Index comes out, somebody who thought they were more conservative than they actually are complains about it. So there's no more controversy this year than any other year. When I got in the legislature in 2014, my seatmates Brent Hill and Del Raybould complained about their score. They complained about the Freedom Foundation has an agenda and they want to go after certain legislators, which isn't even true. The Idaho Freedom Foundation does have an agenda, and it's about freedom and fiscal responsibility. Therefore, they rate the bills. But whatever legislators do with their votes, well, that's up to them. You know, we're kind of agnostic in terms of what the legislators do. We just report it to the public. And that's what gets them riled up, is that their freedom score doesn't match their words. Their spending score doesn't match their words. And so they have to blame somebody. And, it's just part of the world. And so that's what we do. And for the deep dive in figuring out how we do the scoring, we can go into that. But I'll let you direct me.
So let's talk a bit about what are your metrics. Do you happen to have that? I'm sure I can pull those up while you're kind of
Oh,
talking about it a
sure.
little bit, like your freedom index, and then you have your spending index. And people seem to think that somebody's sitting back there, and we do things, or you do things rather, like IACI does, and they say, well, we like it, so we're going to give it a good score. We don't like it, we're going to give it a bad score. But you don't have personal opinion in there at all. You have a very well-defined metric that everything is balanced against. The bills are balanced against those metrics. And then from those metrics, then the lawmaker, based on how they voted for or against those bills, then that calculates out what their score is. But do you have those
Absolutely.
metrics that you can bring up by any chance?
Yeah, if you'll let me share the screen, I'll be
Yeah.
happy to share them. And what we did is we went through what the principles of freedom are, basically. Is a bill constitutional or not? Does it grow government? Does it make something government that used to be private? Does it create barriers to entry? Does it violate personal freedoms and personal rights? All of these metrics. And we've structured it so that it is as objective as possible. So that like if we got hit by a bus, somebody else could pick this up and largely get the same results we do. And so that's been our goal on this. And so here's the metrics. This is right from the Freedom Index. And you can see, does it create, expand, or enlarge any agency? Does it transfer something from the private sector to government? You can read through all of these. Does it violate the spirit or letter of the US or Idaho constitutions? Does it violate the principles of federalism by increasing federal authority? Does it increase the government redistribution of wealth? I think these are all things that conservatives could agree on, is that we want government in our lives in the smallest way possible, only for certain proper roles, providing justice, law enforcement. And so I would challenge any conservative to come on and look at these freedom metrics and tell us which, if any of them, they disagree with. Because I doubt you could find any disagreement with somebody who's truly a conservative that would say, you know what, that's a bogus measure. Does it, increase government spending or debt? These are all good freedom index measures. And then on the spending bills, when we talk about budgets, here is the spending index. Why won't it let me scoot all the way over? There we go. Okay. Spending index. Does this budget enact powers and activities that extend beyond the proper role of government? So when we're doing budgeting and they budget for particular line items, we ought to at least scrutinize what those line items are for. Does it incur wasteful spending? Does it increase the growth of government? These are all budget issues that I think people would agree with. Does it increase the size of government by adding FTPs, full-time positions? And so we don't want government growing. And so all of these measures are saying, is this a good budget or not? And so and I'll say this, there are other scorecards out there. And I am not.
Let's go ahead and bring you back on.
Okay.
Your screen sharing there.
Okay. You can bring me back on. Do I need to stop it?
Yes.
Okay.
There we are.
Stop. All right. So there's other scorecards out there, and I have no problem with looking at other scorecards. They largely agree with us. IACI is the inverse. When you voting for IACI bills, your freedom score drops, and when you're voting against IACI bills, your freedom score increases. IACI's metric is very simple. Do you agree with IACI or do you disagree? That's the only metric they've ever shown. And so IACI just determines willy-nilly what their bills are that they propose. But there's other ones, like the American Conservative Union does some ratings, the Club for Growth does some ratings, and they'll use 20 bills, maybe 30 bills to do their assessment. Go ahead.
I thought it was interesting, speaking of some of the other ones that are out there, there is a Idaho GOP scorecard. I don't know if you've seen their scorecard, but it largely agreed with you. I mean, so in the top 8 or 10 that were there, They were the same 8 or 10, just in a slightly different order. And I was just visiting with Senator Zederfeld yesterday, and she was telling me a little bit about she had visited with the guy that does this, and he said there were people that were disagreeing with the saying that it had to be biased or some way. They literally used AI to look at the GOP's platform, what they stand for, and said, AI, balance what the GOP stands for against the bills, and then rate them accordingly, and let AI do it all. And the GOP platform pretty much, I mean, is going to be slightly different than IFF, but on just how you rate your stuff. But it was very close, and they had the same people at the top and the same people at the bottom. So the people at the bottom, you can complain about everybody's metrics, but at the end of the day, it's your votes that are being counted, and they're just saying, does it increase spending or does it decrease spending? Because the GOP platform wants decreased spending. They want less government control. They want they want less bureaucracy. And so if you disagree with those things, I guess maybe, you're going to disagree with the scoring, but
Well, I'll tell you this, to the extent that the GOP scorecard matches with ours tells you the extent that the GOP platform is conservative.
Yep.
Idaho Freedom Foundation, we're nonpartisan. We don't
That's
care
right.
whether you're Republican or Democrat. By the way, I would love every legislator to score an A on the index. That
Yeah.
would,
Oh,
I mean,
Idaho would be beautiful.
I taught economics for 25 years, and I told my students what they needed to do to get an A, and I don't grade on the curve. I would have loved for my students to all get an A in economics. Same with this Freedom Index. I would love every legislator to get a 95 or above and be an A, and Idaho would be better for it. We'd have less government on our backs. We'd have lower taxes. We'd have more freedoms. It would be amazing. But to the extent the GOP scorecard matches up with ours, tells you how conservative the GOP platform is compared to the metrics we use. It's very conservative. And so it should be of no surprise to anyone that the legislators who scored well on the Freedom Index also scored well on the GOP platform. And it's a witness is strengthened by having multiple witnesses. And so when you have 2 or 3 witnesses out there saying the same thing, it makes it a more powerful message. And so I welcome that. And I'm glad to see that they largely agree with us. And so it's another testament to what legislators are conservative and what ones struggle. And so I know the term Republicans in name only. Well, you can apply that to their scorecard. I would say conservatives in name only applies to our scorecard, and they're largely the same.
That's right. I tend to be personally a little bit more leaning on the libertarian side. I think every platform has things that I agree with and disagree with, but I'm somewhere in between the Republican and the libertarian viewpoint on things, which is very conservative. I just want government out of my life. I have not seen a single thing that government does that the private sector could not do better. And if you have one, other than spend money like it's coming out of somebody else's pocket, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a single thing that they can do better. If you walk into the DMV, it's a disaster. It's you hang out forever. You're just waiting. They don't greet you. It'd be nice if they said, "Hi, how are you doing today? It's good to see you," the way that a business would, but your government, the way they treat you. Next,
Yeah.
And
Walter Williams used to talk about this, and he'd say, look at the areas where you're most satisfied in your life and the areas where you're least satisfied. He goes, you walk into a fast food place, you go to Chick-fil-A, they bend over backwards to find ways to serve you better and get you through the line faster and treat you nicely. Go to FedEx, go to UPS, and see what they try and do to get your package from A to B. Look at Amazon. Sometimes they want to get you a package within hours, not days anymore.
Right.
Contrast that with the natural experiment of going into the U.S. Post Office.
That's right.
And, is your experience at the U.S. Post Office better than Amazon or better than FedEx? No. They don't care whether they lose or gain you as a customer. The U.S. Post Office will always be there because they're federally subsidized.
And that is exactly the problem. When you know that the money is going to come in no matter what, then you don't care so much about satisfying the customer, which in the case of government is your boss.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about satisfying their boss. Name one other job where you don't care about satisfying your boss, and that you will treat them poorly, and that you won't greet them with a smile on your face, and that you won't just snap to attention when they walk through the door. And I get it. There's some government workers out there who are going to watch this and they're going, well, Shane's just being a big meanie today. And this is a generalized statement. I understand that there's one or two of you out there that I genuinely love walking in and seeing. You have a smile on your face, but you stand out because it's so rare. And that's the case.
Well, it's the incentive system in public employment does not reward great behavior. It doesn't reward it. But you can still have good people in public service who want to do well. And so that's why they do stand out, is because they are actually trying to do good. And, every area of life, you have people trying to do good. And those are the ones you love dealing with. And the private markets tend to reward that good behavior better in terms of their employees. And that's why we generally have better experiences at the private companies. But it doesn't mean we can't have a good experience once in a while in the public sector too.
That's right. But to bring it back around, the point of all of this was, I want less government because they just don't do a great job at things. And I think most people would agree with that. And on the other side, where they're trying to grow government, they're saying, hey, please government me harder, Daddy. Rule me harder. They want more buck. They just want to keep growing it and growing it and growing it. My question is, why? What have they done great for you lately? And you may like the guy that's in right now and the people who are making the rules right now, but the problem is, as soon as you grow that government, you open the door for the next guy that walks in that you may not like so well, and he's going to use those rules to come down on you. And it's just back and forth and back and forth. It'd be better just to get them out of our lives and let us go about our business.
Well, here's the catch. And you mentioned Senator Zeiderveld, and she is one of the all-stars in terms of her conservatism and policy and in spending. And she pointed out something that we've recognized in economics long ago, is that why do you have so many people supporting government and government institutions when they achieve inferior results compared to the private market? And here's why. She recognized that the largest employer in the state of Idaho, who do you think that is? No, it's not Micron. It's the state of Idaho. The biggest employer is the state government. Also, so when you have 25,000 employees across the state getting a check from the state of Idaho, are they going to vote for leaner government, or are they going to vote for more government? Not only that, you have a lot of people receiving checks from government through welfare, redistribution, and healthcare, a variety of other reasons. And those are in the hundreds of thousands across Idaho who are getting Medicaid or Medicare or some other form of public assistance. Do they want government cut in those areas of public provision? Probably not. And when you reach this tipping point where more people are getting checks from government than are paying into it, what are the results of the voting going to be? You're going to see a lot of voting for bigger government and a lot less reliance on private markets and individual freedoms. That's why elections are so important. You need to elect good, principled, conservative leadership. Otherwise, this movement towards a government-run society is going to continue, because government gives out the goodies and people like getting the goodies, but you need conservatives to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on the forgotten man, the taxpayer.
And you brought up a point that's that immediately brings up to mind my favorite person, Governor Little. And so what's going to happen? We're going to watch this happen. We watched it in the past elections. We're going to watch it happen again. We're going to see people like Governor Little. Where does he spend his time campaigning? He spends his time campaigning in the executive branch, those people below him. It's easy for him to get a platform, to be able to walk in and get a meeting. And so he'll go meet with the teachers. He'll go meet with all the different government agencies and talk about all the great things that he's going to do for them.
Hmm.
And then that's how, and then he gets, and that's how he gets their votes. And so you've got the largest employer in the state of Idaho under his ability to walk in and campaign with them. And when he campaigns, what do they want? More, more, more. So what does he promise? More, more, more. And then he comes over and he starts using some of his best friends over in the legislative side to say, okay, I made promises over here. Now I need you to help me keep them.
Yeah. And when he wants to campaign with the people, so to speak, he runs big campaign fundraisers to bring in the big dollars and he invites the big corporate donors. You don't see rallies with the people like Trump has done. You
Right.
see you see him go and do these big corporate fundraisers. And you're right, he is with the executive branch agencies all the time. Superintendent of public education, he's at the teachers things. And so you're like, yeah, wouldn't it imagine what it would be like in Idaho to have a governor like Ron DeSantis? Now, Ron DeSantis leads out. You may not agree with everything on it, but he leads out and says, you know what? This is an agenda I want to achieve for Florida. And it's largely a conservative agenda, school choice, limited government and lowering taxes. So he wants all of those things done in Florida. And so he leads out on it. Imagine if our governor in Idaho led out on things like that. He doesn't. He just sits back in the governor's office and kind of just waits for bills to cross his desk and then puts his finger up, you're right, to see which way he should go on those. And so he only signed school choice because he was boxed into a corner, that there
Mhm.
were enough legislators out there who were listening to the people. And so finally he ended up signing it. And medical freedom. He vetoed it the first time around. The bill came back largely the same. He didn't add anything more into it. And finally he was boxed into signing it. He's kind of wasting a conservative governor's seat there because there's so much he could do and not worry about reelection, but he doesn't do it because he has other interests. And
Have
so
have you
it's
noticed
frustrating.
on his X account and on his Facebook and everything, all of a sudden he's pro MAGA, 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 MAGA. It makes me wonder, do you think he's got ambitions higher than the governor's seat, or is that where he's
I don't know, but that shows me somebody who's a follower, not a leader.
that's right.
I want somebody to lead out for Idaho and show that Idaho can be the conservative beacon. We can be way more conservative than Florida if we just had a leader that would kind of direct that way, because you have enough votes in the legislature to get all of these conservative things done.
We absolutely should be the leader. I mean, nothing against Florida, but when you look at Florida and look at who's going there, um, Idaho really truly at heart is more conservative, but yet we tend to be on the follow side. So our legislature, they say, "Oh, look what Florida just did. That's a good idea. Let's do that over here."
Yeah.
And the same thing with the governor. Oh, look what DeSantis is doing. Maybe we'll talk about that. Well, let's wait and see if the legislator talks about that. Oh, they're talking about. Okay, good. We can talk about this now.
And I don't want to offend the teachers. So even if the legislature wants it, maybe, gosh, don't want to offend them.
Yeah, and that's the problem in Idaho, and people are moving here. And listen, I am I'm going to make some people mad when I say this, but I have a home theater company, and when people move into the area, one of the first things they want done is their TVs hung on the wall. So I get into the homes of a lot of the people moving into Idaho from around the country, especially California when they're coming in. And a
Mhm.
lot of people are saying, "Oh, these Californians are coming in with their." Listen, I've had conversations with a lot of them, and I am sad to say some of them are more conservative than the Idahoans in
Yeah.
their viewpoint. They have lived through it. They have seen what happens. And when I start talking about, well, did you know that we're fighting this right now with our governor, and we're fighting this? They're shocked, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I tried to get away from that. What are you guys doing over here?" And so a lot of them that are moving into our part of the area now, over in the Ada County area and up where you guys are at, that might be a little bit different, but at least down here in the Magic Valley, they're moving here because they're trying to get away from what the liberals, or if they're in other parts of the state, even the conservative side, what the RINOs have done to their state, and they're fleeing. They're trying to get away from it, and they're not bringing their ideologies here as much as people think they are.
Yeah, and so we're kind of reaching a tipping point in Idaho, and it brings some opportunities to us. We have seen the legislature move to the right. And I attribute that to a lot more groups engaging in Idaho, a lot more grassroots involvement in Idaho. And yes, I'm going to credit the Freedom Index and the work that we do.
Oh, absolutely.
That when voters are informed and they know what their legislators actually do, they tend to vote accordingly. And so over the years, as we've done the index and as other conservative groups have developed and gotten engaged in Idaho, just this last primary, for example, we had a shift towards conservatives by a net gain of 8 legislators. In a 105-person legislature, that can mean a lot. And in the Senate, it does. You're so close to having the conservatives be the majority of the caucus and therefore determine leadership that we have some great opportunities for doing that. And so this shift in the legislature has been driving policy. It hasn't come from the governor's office. But that means that this next primary election in 2026 can make the difference in whether Idaho continues on this conservative path or if it reverses course and goes back to business as usual. I like the people moving in from California, Oregon, and Washington. They're coming here because they view Idaho as maybe a last chance at freedom because the states they're leaving have just gone Marxist, essentially. And so I want to capitalize on that and see what we can do in Idaho. Would you mind sharing? Let me share my screen again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Here is the trend of the Idaho Freedom Index. And so 6-year history of the freedom scores. So the top one is the House Freedom Index score, and the bottom one is the Senate Freedom Index score. And you can see this last session, we had a jump of 12 to 15 points in both the House and Senate in terms of conservative voting. Now, I attribute that to 3 things. We had better legislators, like I said, a net gain of 8 conservatives in the House and Senate. We had legislators voting better, that the average scores are higher. They're voting yes on conservative bills more often and no on sucky bills more often. And we're having better legislation run through. We had school choice, we had medical freedom, we had DEI prohibition, we had limiting public handouts to illegal immigrants, prohibiting that. And so better legislation means better scoring too. But I also want to point out something else with these trends. If you look at the 6-year history, this wasn't the best year ever. It was the best year for the Senate. The Senate is the one becoming far more conservative, but it wasn't for the House. It wasn't the best one yet. We still have more room to grow. And look, our average is still below 70%. On the whole, it's a C average. I'd like to see us in the B and A average range. But this is hopeful. This is an optimistic message that the trend is in the right direction. Now, let me temper that by looking at the spending scores. Yeah, I have to scroll down to show that the spending scores are largely below 40%. This jump right here was momentous for the Senate. And the reason why this happened is because the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee changed the way they did budgets. They vote on maintenance budgets separate than the increases. And we call the increases the enhancement budgets, which grow government. And so it allowed the senators to be a bit more conservative and vote against budgets that were expanding government more often. Sadly, the House spending score has stayed frustratingly low. It's still at 38%. The Senate's at 36%. We have work to do here. And so I think in this next primary election, we're going to be watching the spending scores. We're going to inform voters about how their legislators are actually voting on the budgets. It is easier now than ever before to vote against expanded budgets because you vote on the expansion separate than the maintenance. And so I would say every enhancement budget that grows government by adding employees, that grows government by adding spending, or that relies more on federal spending ought to be voted against. It ought to be shot down because 5 years we've had 55% increase in spending. Our enhancement budgets ought to actually be negative. We ought to be cutting back those increases. We ought to have less employment, less reliance on the federal government, and cuts in overall spending. And I think going into a primary election year, the time is now. The time is now to finally show some conservative muscle and say, you know what? If Argentina can cut its budgets by 30%, Idaho can do the same.
So let's bring you back up on the screen there.
All right, let's do it. Okay, stop sharing, and we're back.
So coming into this next election, what do you think voters really need to be watching for? How do voters? So you grade on the bills, you grade on the legislature and how they've done, but how do they know when somebody new comes in?
Well, we've been doing this for a long time now. And like you said, we look at the legislation. So we rate the bills. This last legislative session, we didn't use 30 or 40 bills to determine our scorecard. We rated 444 bills. Now, not all of those bills get to the floor for a vote. I think in the House and Senate, it was somewhere around 185 bills or whatever ended up getting voted upon in either chamber. And so, but I mean, every bill that ticked on freedom got rated. Every bill that ticked on spending got rated. And when they got voted on in the Senate or the House, you can see their scores. And so we rate the bills, the legislators determine their scores. I would encourage the people of Idaho to go to your town halls, to listen to your candidates, especially listen to the incumbent candidates and see what they have to say, and then go and look at their scores. The scores don't lie. You know, that when we're rating that many bills, you might have a legislator disagree on a bill or two and say, you know what, I really disagreed with them on this bill. That's why my score is low. That's not why your score is low. You had to disagree on like 40 or 50 bills to have your score be in the C range instead of the A range. It's not one or two bills. It is a pattern. That's why we rate so many bills, is because we want to see the patterns, not the outliers. And so by being as broad as we can and looking at as much legislation as we can, you get the clearest picture you possibly can for how your legislators actually behave.
Okay, ready to have some fun?
Let's do it.
All right, so over here, let me see if I can bring this up. I posted on our X account for Shane Talks Politics, and it's that's where my X account lies. But the live tomorrow that you were going to be coming on, and that you were going to be diving into your 2025 bill ratings and the RINO drama trying to discredit their ratings. And immediately we had a couple of folks pop in there. Lauren said, be sure to ask him about his rating on the SNAP bill. And I don't think she thought I was actually going to do this. So, hey, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Let's give you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, the SNAP bill said that you would not be able to use the federal SNAP benefits for sugary items, for sweet items, for soda pop, for candy bars or whatnot. So it gave some details on that. But and we had an internal debate on this bill too. Our policy team is amazing.
How is that controversial, by the way? Before you get that, I mean, how could that even be controversial that our tax dollars are paying for luxury items that many people have to avoid those luxury items when they're spending it out of their own pocket? So how can it even be controversial that we don't want to spend our tax dollars on this?
Well, we rated it negative, and that's why she's asking the question. And here's the catch on it, is that I understand the principle of trying to say, you know what, we're going to limit it on certain things. But it was such a clunky regulation that it would say you couldn't buy a candy bar, but you couldn't buy power bars either. You couldn't buy granola bars or healthy foods, you know, some foods that would click as healthy, but it would still allow you to buy ice cream. And, so it would limit some junk foods, allow other junk foods. It would limit some healthy foods and allow some other healthy foods. And that's the problem with the definitions. And so we had a problem with it, and we were very close to being neutral on it because of the counterbalancing effects. But here's what I think tipped us to negative on this, is we have been working for a long time on repealing the grocery tax. And in repealing a grocery tax, Idaho, just like other states, would say, hey, anything, you have to define what a grocery is. And so anything that fits the SNAP definition would be a grocery. And so if we ever did get to be like the 46 other states who don't tax groceries, then we would say, you know what, you're not going to pay tax on anything that behaves like a grocery according to the SNAP definition. Well, do we really want the federal government telling us, or do we really want the state of Idaho telling us what qualifies as a grocery and not, based on these things, determining our taxes, trying to guide our consumption with our taxes? And so that's where we came out with the negative. And so, you know what? Reasonable people can disagree on one bill, but when we've rated 444, you cannot say that the House rating on, or that the Idaho Freedom Foundation rating on, I think it was Bill 109 on the SNAP definition, broke somebody's freedom score. So anyway, and
See,
we're bound to have disagreements, and I welcome them, and I'm happy to have those discussions.
this is why I do this, because because I like to hit you with the hard questions. I like to hit anybody with the hard questions. It's when they come back and start attacking you as an individual.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, let's go back over here. They're attacking you as an individual or you as an organization, rather than coming out and attacking the bill itself and saying, and really doing a deep dive. And that's because you don't have enough knowledge to back up your position on something. Well, I asked you about that and you were that quick. You were ready to answer the question because it makes a lot of sense. When government starts getting it, again, they got involved. What we, the people, would like to see is, hey, let's, instead of saying these are the things you can't buy, why don't we come up with a bill that says, here's the things you can buy, like WIC used to do. I don't know if they still do that or not. I know years and years and years ago, I knew somebody on WIC, and it gave me an opportunity to dig in a little bit and say, it says, here's the few items that we as our taxpayers are willing to spend to help somebody that's poor, versus trying to say, well, here's all the items that we're going to exclude, because I think that would be a lot longer list than here's some necessary items we're going to help you out with. And I don't think the government ought to be doing it anyway. If I had my way, we'd do away with it altogether, and we'd let the churches do what they were supposed to do and help the poor. Yeah, and I'm going to make a lot of people mad by saying that, but that's my position on it. I don't know why it's my responsibility. I have a hard enough time supplying my own family's needs sometimes without having to supply everybody else's. But
that's exactly where I was going to go with my answer. Is the SNAP program itself is a flawed program. You're putting all this power in the federal government's hands, and you're having Idaho administer it in some way. And so we can't just change the rules. We have to ask for a waiver to be able to change the rules the way we want. And that's really what Bill 109 was about. It did not change what the SNAP could be used for. It was a bill to ask for permission from the federal government to make those changes. And the federal government is likely to say no on that because they like having the power. They don't like the states having the power. So the whole program is flawed from the beginning, that we should not be using taxpayer dollars to fund a federal program to dictate how poor families spend the government money on their necessities. The better way to care for the poor, the caring way to care for the poor, is to leave it to individuals, families, communities, churches, caring institutions, not bureaucracies who have a history of inefficiency, waste, and fraud and abuse. And so I think that we shouldn't reward the SNAP program by giving it legitimacy by saying, hey, we need to ask for a waiver so Idaho can behave a certain way. So true conservatives are saying, you know what, we don't want to have to keep manipulating these federal programs to suit us. It'd be better to get rid of the federal program altogether. And so you challenge our rating on the SNAP bill. I challenge your conservative principles on legitimizing the program to begin with.
And it's just what we're talking about. People don't think. If you think things through logically for a minute, if I reach in my pocket and I pull out $100 bill and I hand it to somebody that's hurting right now, 100% of $100 goes into their pocket that they can take down to the store and they can go buy groceries for their family. Now, if the government takes it, there's an administrative fee. because first somebody has to collect that money, then somebody has to shift that money around to where it's supposed to go. It's going to have oversight, and then it's got to be sent out to someone. And by the time that $100 gets down to the person, who knows what's actually left? You might actually know, because you look at some of the stuff deeper. But is it $50? Is it $25 that actually goes into the pocket of somebody who needed that money?
Yeah.
And that also then comes with strings attached, which we were just talking about with SNAP bills and everything else. And it also comes with a legislator attached that is saying, hey, look at all the great things I just did for you. So now you need to send me your vote so you can keep getting your money. And
And what you mentioned is very wasteful, but there's
yes,
also fraud and abuse. How many families are getting these taxpayer dollars that don't deserve it, or double dipping, or getting or making up names, and
yeah.
the use of the programs too. How many institutions are accepting these SNAP dollars for things that didn't qualify but are still accepting them nonetheless. Also, SNAP benefits have been tracked over the decades too. People will sell their SNAP benefits at a discount so that they have the freedom to spend the dollars on the alcohol or cigarettes or whatever else they want. And so there's fraud and abuse inherent in these federal programs as well.
And there's very little oversight on the fraud and the abuse, because nobody wants to get tagged as the person who's going after the poor. And that's what they'll do. It's the same thing that they're doing with immigration. They're saying, well, you're anti-Mexican. No, we're not anti-Mexican or Honduran or whoever else it is coming in. We're just anti-walk through the door. And that's without any vetting, without any requirements that you become integrated into our society. And
Mm.
and that is government as a whole. And so I personally think that we have destroyed our sense of community with welfare. And people say, well, what do you mean by that? Do you think that we have a greater sense of community now than we did 50 years ago or 100 years ago?
No,
Absolutely not.
how many people look at their paycheck and see how much is taken out in taxes and see all the government programs and then go, you know what? I'm paying all these taxes. There's all these programs out there. They are caring for the needy. I don't need to. And
That's exactly what happened.
there are I've been a PhD economist for over 25 years now, and I see the research. I was actually specialized in welfare economics when I was in graduate school, and that the public spending on social welfare crowds out private investment in social welfare. So we have less people giving to charities, less people being charitable themselves because they feel like there's a government institution that has that responsibility. And therefore, not only does the recipient lose the benefit of getting good care, loving care, the givers also lose the benefit of blessing other people's lives and feeling good about being an American citizen and a carer of their fellow man. And that makes us much more callous and cold as a society.
It does all the way around. And we don't know our neighbors the way that we used to know our neighbors. I mean, I've got people that move in around me all the time and move out. And I hate to say, I'm just as guilty as anyone else. We used to go knock on the door and say, hi, neighbor, and welcome to the community. And what's your name? And here's a little gift basket for you. We're glad to see that you're here. And now they move in and you're looking out the windows. Who's coming in next door? I wonder what kind of people they're going to be. And we've just lost that sense of oneness and that sense of community. But it just what you said, it's when the government is the one that's dishing out the dollars for the charities and for the needy, the individual receiving that, all they do is complain they're not getting enough. Where
That-
if I gave it to you and you looked at me and said, what, you're only giving me $100? I say, how about you just go ahead and give me that back?
Yeah. And, it creates a sense of entitlement. And
Yep.
I know in America, there are hundreds of millions of stories of coming from nothing to something. That you're down on your luck, things aren't going well, and you've exacted the American success story. You came from nothing into something. Very few of those stories are attributed to a comprehensive Department of Health and Welfare program. But I've heard many stories, on the other hand, that said, I had a caring neighbor, or the church came and helped me out when I needed it most and gave me the opportunity to make something of myself. And those are the kind of stories that America's built on. And to the extent we put the responsibility on federal or state government, we miss out on a lot of great opportunities to help people, and those people lose out on the great opportunities to help themselves.
So what's some of the crazy? I'm going to shift gears just a second. What's some of the craziest things that you've seen people accusing IFF of?
Oh, they number one is based on scoring legislators. I associate with think tank leaders across the country. We have 50 states, and there's probably 100 kind of Idaho Freedom Foundation type organizations. Many of them kind of work the legislative process and compromise and try and get bills passed. Um, Many of them also do what we do, try and do those legislative agendas, but we also incorporate a degree of accountability by doing a freedom index and a spending index. I haven't seen one that does it as comprehensively as the Idaho Freedom Foundation, having two indexes, rating as many bills as we do, and assigning a grade and a score to every legislator based on their votes. But the biggest complaint I see happens every time we release a freedom index. You have legislators who have scores that they think don't reflect how conservative they themselves think they are. And
Mm-hmm.
they're surprised that they're not the sterling conservative they thought themselves to be. And so they lash out. They say, oh, look, I disagreed with them on the SNAP bill. I disagreed with them on this bill. Fine, name 6 bills you disagree with us on.
Mm.
And if I rework the scores and flip the scores on those 6 bills, great. You go from a C minus to a C.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to disagree on like 40 bills. And so if you disagree on 40 bills and you send me a list of 40 bills where you think we got it wrong, fine, send that to me. But if I flip those scores, you know what you're asking me to do? Flip those scores so that you would be an A. But everyone who voted opposite you, and in the more conservative way, in my opinion, would be the C's. So you have a C legislator saying, I disagree on these 40 bills. So that conservative, that Heather Scott up there, or that Glenita Zeiderveld, isn't the A. I'm the A. They are a C. I don't buy it. I look at those A's. I look at those conservatives up there. All of them in the A range, I say, are stellar conservatives in the state. They make the speeches on the floor that back it up. They behave in a way to back it up. Their spending scores are generally good as well. And so, yeah, those are the conservatives. I don't buy it. Some C legislator saying that there's 40 bills they disagree with, so they're the conservative and those others aren't. It doesn't wash.
So you don't grade all these yourself, do you? You've got a team of
Oh,
people over there. How many people do you have actually at IFF? I've been meaning to ask you that.
We have 10 full-time here, and the ratings we do on the bills, it's not just one person. Every bill that gets rated gets seen and approved by at least 3 sets of eyes. So you can't say, oh, you have one bill rater there that's off the rails. No, it's our policy team, and it's not the same 3 looking at every bill every time. Our policy team divides up the work, and we go through and look at all the bills, and at least 3 sets of eyes approves each rating, and there we go.
Do
And
they look at who presented the bill, or do they just look at the bill text?
all we look at is the bill text. The statement of purpose usually is a good indicator of what's going on. We actually look at all the bill text. We don't care who the sponsor is. We're no respecters of sponsors whatsoever. We just look at what the bill does, square it with our metrics, and assign a score that way, assign a rating that way.
And do you rate the legislators, or do they just their voting, how they voted against the bill?
We rate the bills, the legislators do the voting, and therefore determine their scores and their grades. So all we do is rate the bills and then tabulate the results based on the votes. And like I said, I would love all the legislators to be voting for the positive bills and against the negative bills, and Idaho would be better off.
I knew the answer to those questions, but I think those are important questions for the public to know, that they're not rating. It's not a human that's looking at it and saying, okay, what do I think of this legislator and how they did this last round? That their grade has nothing to do with what somebody's opinion of that individual is. It's simply how the bill met the matrix, and then how they voted on that bill.
And you know what? After every election, every primary and general election season, it's a human thing to go, oh man, that guy is going to be great, or that lady's going to be an awesome senator, or that one, gosh, I really don't have much faith in them. I saw how they campaign, and I can't tell you how many times we've been surprised. Somebody who we thought was going to be a solid conservative turns out to be very squishy,
Mm.
scoring in the C's or D's. And once in a while, somebody who we thought was going to be, oh, they're going to be a disappointment, but they end up scoring in the high B's or A's, and you go, oh man, where'd that come from? They are a conservative. And so I I really, am agnostic as to where the legislators score because they do that themselves. I want to make sure we get the ratings right and that we do the tabulations on their scores and grades right so that the voters have as close to perfect information as they can on what kind of representation they have. And we even do the governor.
So, um, wrapping it up, we've got about 10 minutes left here. Is there anything that you really want to say to people or that you want to get out there as we're going into this next primary season?
Yeah, if you don't mind, can I talk a
Take it and wing, man.
Okay. Well, I have heard, we always hear um, criticism about the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and much of it is undeserved. And once in a while, I'll take a hit and go, you know what? Maybe that bill rating was wrong. When I was a legislator, I'd contact the Freedom Foundation, and go, I think you scored this bill wrong. And we're always open to have input, and so that's great. But I've heard a lot of unfair criticism out there about me personally, about my wife personally, about the conservative movement in general. I just want to tell you that I have been involved in Idaho politics for many years now. We moved back to Idaho in 2001. I started teaching economics at BYU Idaho and taught there for 23 years. And it's been a great experience. So I have a lot of experience as a PhD economist. But then I got involved in the local politics. College Republicans wanted to work with me to work on campaigns and build a movement at the university. And so I got involved in county politics, and I ended up being a county chair in the GOP, and worked very hard to get good people elected to office over the years, largely to be disappointed by how they behaved once they got in office. And so in 2014, we said, you know what, sometimes to make the change you want, you got to do it yourself. And so I ran for office. We worked hard, and I got elected 3 times to the Idaho House. So I served 3 terms in the Idaho House of Representatives. I worked for 2 years at the Idaho Freedom Foundation as a policy analyst after my my representative work, and after I got voted out of the House. And then a year and a half ago, the board said, "Hey, our president Wayne Hoffman, after his years of dedicated service, is resigning, and we need a new president." And so they came to me, and I wasn't really of the mind to leave my great teaching career that I have enjoyed for 15 years, sorry, 23 years at BYU Idaho, and 3 years beyond that in Ohio, because I love teaching. I love economics, but I also love policy, and I like getting policy right, and I want to work for the greater good. And so they appealed to my sense of duty, and um, to meet my family's needs and everything, we said I need to get at least as much as what I was doing, and so basically matched my salary. So it wasn't a there was no step up here. I'm not doing this for wealth. I'm not doing this for any other reason other than to do the right thing. And my wife is equally dedicated. She got involved in politics long before I did. Her father was the GOP state chair for 7 years back in the late 70s and early 80s. And so she has a long history of Idaho politics, and she, like me, has this this personal interest in trying to make Idaho the beacon of freedom and liberty. And so she got involved at the behest of others to be involved with the Freedom Caucus movement, and she has done excellent work there. And so we know that when you get into politics, you can get some good things done. You can also be very frustrated. But what I didn't realize at the time was, when the founders signed the Declaration of Independence, they pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to the cause of making America free. Um, I haven't sacrificed my fortune or my life yet for this, but you do sacrifice your sacred honor in a way that people will attack you, attack your representation, your reputation, attack your character in unfounded and dishonest ways. And both me and my wife have had those attacks come at us. And so our honor has been sacrificed, even though we work on a daily basis to act in honorable ways. I don't lie to people. I will tell you the truth straight up. My wife is the same. We work hard for the cause. We're happy to do it, even though it means enemies are created along the way, and I think mostly unjustly created. We're just trying to do good things, like a lot of other Idahoans. And so, I just wanted to put that out there that coming to the Freedom Foundation, you mentioned that people want to take shots at us, want to blame the official, so to speak. All we do is rate the bills, let the legislators score themselves, and report the results. And yeah, we are engaged in the freedom movement. We're going to keep doing it. 2024 was our most successful year ever
Oh, it was.
in terms of engagement, in terms of legislative victories, in terms of development, in creating a grassroots system of partners who are willing to donate to this cause and contribute to the Idaho Freedom Foundation. 2025 is going even better. We're going to be even better than last year. So if it's the complaints and the attacks on us that is driving that, bring it on, because we're doing much better than we ever have. And I am
Well,
happy to be engaged in this work despite the personal cost.
Ron, here's what I'm seeing. Just to what you said, the last vote, the last election, that's the word I'm trying to spit out. We did such a great job in the Magic Valley of we had 3 legislators that needed to go. They were true RINOs. They were I would call them Democrats that just realized they were never going to get elected if they ran as a Democrat. So they put an R next to their name and ran. And we got them out of there. But what's happening now, much to the credit of IFF, by the way, being able to go in and take and prove to the public, use the grading and say, here's the bills, here's how they voted on them, and here's their grade. And are they real conservatives or not? And being able to contrast that was very helpful in getting that done. But that's why you're getting attacked. It's not your grading. It's your sunshine. It's the sunshine that's coming down on these people, and they want their power back. And the little club here in Twin Falls and in the Magic Valley, the little club that got disrupted because because of groups like yours and because of the Magic Valley Liberty Alliance and great people like Glenita and Dave, and I mean I could just go down the list. I don't want to leave anybody out. Clint and Josh and so many great legislators that did a good job. It's shining light on the darkness, and the dark doesn't like it, and they want to retreat back into the darkness. They want to drag everybody with them, and so I just say keep it up. Don't worry about what people are saying. I've had people say terrible things about me for what I'm doing here, and I look at who's saying it, and I went, well, of course you don't like me.
And if we just have a minute, I'll give you a preview of next year.
So
here is the Idaho Freedom Index page. We did a heat map, so to speak, of legislative grades. Took all the legislators in that district together and put their their scores. And you can see that North Idaho used to be all green. It does have green district 2 here. 3, 4, and 5 have gone a little bit gold, and that's
just real quick, Ron, just so that those people that can't see it because it's a little bit small on their phone. Green is a rating of an A to B, C to D is in the yellow, and an F is in the red. So in case you couldn't see what that little key is off to the side there, I wanted to make sure they knew what you were talking about. Go ahead.
And I'm going to name names. District 1, Senator Woodward and Representative Sauter are driving that score to be red. Cornell Razor is the green legislator in that district, but overall he's being overpowered. I mean, the scores are being overpowered, and so it's making that one red. But North Idaho has historically been a green stronghold, and we need to keep that green. Magic Valley, like you said, is doing much better. I mean, we have legislators coming from the Magic Valley, but look at Eastern Idaho. That is your
That's
Marxist red communist bloc in Idaho that needs to be fixed.
what's
And so
causing that.
you have very squishy legislator and constituents who are voting for the people more than the principles. And so we need to educate the people, the constituents over there, that their representation is not matching their conservative values. Stop worrying about whether your legislator was a great bishop or a great church leader. Start worrying about whether they were a great conservative and are worried about taxpayers and freedoms and Idaho going forward, because we're a heartbeat away from being Colorado if we're not vigilant. And so we're going to work in Eastern Idaho to do the Magic Valley Miracle and deepen the Magic Valley Miracle and make Idaho green again.
I love this. So where can they see this? This is right there. It looks like it's on idahofreedom.org. Is there a link on the front page to that, or do you need to dig in just
Yes,
a little
there
bit to
is.
get to
And
that?
so this came from the Idaho Freedom Index. And so you can order your Freedom Index. Just go here to the main page of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, idahofreedom.org. You can click there and get your free copy mailed to you. You can also get it downloaded immediately so you can look at it online. But the Idaho Freedom Index is the gold standard for assessing legislators and accountability.
Can you bring that map up one more time?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if people are looking for groups up in these, I'm hoping that maybe I don't know if you do or not, but up in those areas like number one up in the Panhandle, are there any good liberty-minded groups that are very active in the elections and that are helping to bring forth good candidates like the Magic Valley Liberty Alliance does here in Twin in the Magic Valley? Are there any up in the Panhandle that you would push people towards?
Yeah, I think the county GOPs up there do a good job. I think there's the Citizens Alliance for Idaho. Matt Edwards up there kind of leads that. Also, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, we're engaged all across the state too. And we have a C4 and a PAC that gets engaged in the elections. And so our Idaho Freedom PAC and also the Idaho Freedom Action gets engaged. The Magic Valley Liberty Alliance does a great job in the Magic Valley. John Crowder is building a team to do that sort of thing in Eastern Idaho as well. So we have more organizations and grassroots efforts out there than ever before fighting for conservative causes.
Do you know what they're calling basically the MVLA of Eastern Idaho? Do they have a name on that yet?
Not that I'm aware of, but
okay.
Yeah,
John Crowder. Okay.
In Idaho who wants to get engaged in that, have them send me a message. I'll get them engaged in the process. There are some good efforts going on out there, and we just need to build on this momentum.
Maybe I'll talk to you after the show here and see if I can get some contact. Maybe get John Crowder to come on here and visit a little bit about what they're doing. And what about over there in that area 9 on that kind of western side there? That looks like it's hurting.
Yeah, that used to be a stronghold too. Judy Boyle is a representative there. John Schertz is a representative, and I think it's Brandon Shippey is the senator out there, right? But their scores aren't reflecting the conservative nature of that district, and so I would encourage them to, just 2 words of advice: vote better. Or I would encourage the people of that district to reconsider their choices. And so, this map and this information gives you an indication of how your legislators actually vote. And so I encourage people to look at it and use it as a guide. Sure, go to other scorecards and see if, in fact, those other witnesses don't back up what we say.
Why don't you pop back on the screen here one more time, just to say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, we'll do. So,
and then are there any liberty-minded groups that are really active in the elections? Where, here's what it's going to take, guys. Here's why I'm doing this and asking these questions to the public that's watching this right now. More than ever, money is going to flow into this next election cycle. You can tell that they're upset, that the establishment is upset, that we threw some people in their little party, in their little club, that's shining a light on their dirty deeds. And so what they're going to do is they're going to throw money at it. What we did in the Magic Valley to upend that is we threw people at it. And we need to throw people at it. So, what reason I'm asking this, Ron? Are there any groups over there that people can get engaged with, boots on the ground, that are very effective at that are going to make a stand, and go out there and try to help get some good conservatives elected? Do you know if there's any on that side of the state?
Um, yeah, Shane, well, first of all, the Idaho Freedom Pack, we've been doing this for years now, engaging in the electoral process. So donations to that help. John Crowder's group, I'll see if he can come up with a name and some sort of contact info in Eastern Idaho to make that happen. But you're right, money is flowing in more than it ever has. And COVID actually made this problem even worse.
Hmm.
If you don't mind, can I share the screen one more time?
Yeah, have at it.
Okay. Glenita Zeiderveld, did I pick the right one? Or you see?
We're seeing your desktop.
Oh, that's not what I wanted to show. I clicked on the other thing. Okay, let me try one more time here. See if I can do this right. There we go. Okay. So this is what Glenita Zeiderveld pointed out, and this is from the Vote Idaho website about how much money was spent against her. Here's her race.
Can you zoom that in a little bit
Yeah,
or
yeah.
expand it?
Let me see if I can do that. Boomer here running the program.
Yeah, maybe if you just go full screen with that one.
Oh, good call. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
All right. So hopefully that's better. But Glenita Zeiderveld, here's what she raised. Here's what was spent for her. Here's what she spent herself. And notice that outspent by a lot. And her opponent, the spending for her opponent was largely against her too. So you're looking at 3-to-1 spending against a conservative. And that was my experience in my own races. Conservatives out there running for office are usually outspent 3 or 4 or 5-to-1. But you know what? Conservatives are still successful because we are right on principle. And so being right on principle is what's important here. We do need to raise money to put up effective fights. But when I first ran for office, I raised $11,000. My opponent raised close to $20,000. In my last election, 8 years later, I raised $46,000, more than I ever had before, but my opponent spent $180,000.
Wow.
That's how money has flowed into these races. And I think it's COVID money. 11 billion flowed into Idaho. And all these special interests who are getting that government money want legislators who spend it on them. And so that COVID money has flowed into these candidate races. I mean, because look at St. Luke's or healthcare industry. Are they willing to spend a few $1 million on these races to get hundreds of millions and billions of dollars for their industry? Absolutely, they are. And so the money is corrupting politics, but the principles are the antidote to that. So follow your candidate principles. Don't follow the money. Vote for who's right on the issues. And we will put up a fight, and we will put up a fight with less money. But I think that more are with us than are with them. And I'm talking about people and conservatives. And so let's do the work at the grassroots level. Even though we don't have the money, we can defeat the big money.
Tell everybody that you know that the election's coming up. If you really truly want to know how to vote, just take a look at the scorecards. Now you know how IFF is doing their grading. It's a fair matrix. It's the only people crying foul are the ones that don't like their rating, but they won't change the way they vote. They'll just complain. And so take a look at the metrics. Take a look at how they've been voting. Take a look at what their grade is. Dig in and make a decision, and tell everybody that you know where they can find it. I think that's the biggest key, is that these groups like yours, like MVLA, like what's happening in Eastern Idaho, they're so critical, so important, because people just vote who's got an R next to their name. They don't actually look at them. And that's one of the things Magic Valley Liberty Alliance did with their voter guide that they sent out. They shine light on it and said, here you go. And here's the people that we believe are truly going to vote conservative, and put them out there.
About the integrity of our process, I think I left this out. When we rate the bills, we rate them before they're voted on. And so we give the bill a rating. we publish the text, we publish the analysis of how it got that rating before it's ever voted on. If we're going to target any legislators, first of all, I'd have to sacrifice my integrity to do that. Second of all, I'd have to be clairvoyant and know how they're going to vote before they voted to make the
You
bill
kind of look
in a
like
way
a clairvoyant.
favorable to them. It can't happen. And so our process is set up to be an integrity process as well.
So, can you tell me, just with your clairvoyancy, are we ever going to see the Epstein files?
Uh, no, we're not. Yeah, we're never going to see them because that is a very powerful political chip. Just like China's never going to invade Taiwan because the threat is more valuable to them than the actual invasion.
That's true. That's good. Ron, I appreciate you, man, all the time.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on here. And make sure
All
you get over to Idaho Freedom Foundation. Is that .com, .org? I always forget .org. IdahoFreedom.org. IdahoFreedom.org. Donate if you can, because these are the people doing the work. They don't do this for free. They can't do this for free because it's a full-time job. Imagine trying to go through all those bills yourself. We need these guys to be doing what they're doing. Thanks a bunch, Ron.
We value our partners. They're what